All right, well, welcome everybody to this author talk. My name's Zach. With my partner Catherine and our dog Echo, we run RoseyRavelston Books. We're a Blue Mountains-based bookshop and social enterprise, providing 50% of our profits to Amicus, the Humble Friend Project. They're an amazing charity that provide much-needed services to refugees and asylum seekers living within the Sydney community. We also partner with Amicus through our Amicus for Kids program, where you can buy books at cost price that are then donated to the kids of refugees and asylum seekers. I think so far we've donated just over 120 books, thanks to the kindness of our customers. And that's also one of the reasons why we're really excited to have Tia Madden and Sharon Baldwin joining us today. We love helping kids to read, and they've produced a fantastic series of kids' books called The Gardeneers, designed to teach children about gardening and permaculture. At the end of each book, there are a few special features as well, including a short lesson on how to say a word in a different Aboriginal language and resources for more information. And they also donate 25% of their profits to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, which we think is a really cool aspect of what they do. I think that's probably a good time just to acknowledge that this talk is being hosted on Darug and Gundungurra country. And I mean, personally, I think we as a nation still have so much work to do to improve the lives of our First Nation communities and to properly acknowledge their more than 50,000 year history on this land. And speaking of land, I think it's probably a good time to talk about gardening and permaculture and children's books. So you should be able to see on screen, we've got myself, Tia and Sharon. Tia is an artist and illustrator who lives and works in the Blue Mountains, and she's also finishing a Bachelor of Fine Arts at University of New South Wales. She also works as a muralist with Apparition Media Sydney. She's a freelance artist making detailed ballpoint pen drawings, and of course, she's the illustrator of the Gardeneers book series. Sharon Baldwin also lives and works in the Blue Mountains, and she's the founder of Loose Parts Press. She also teaches workshops through Loose Parts Lab and previously ran a non-profit children's art organisation for 5 years and worked as a family photographer. She's the author of the Gardeneers book series. Welcome, Tia and Sharon.
Thank you.
To have you. Originally, we were going to have this event as an in-person event at our little bookshop in Hazelbrook. COVID-19 came along and put an end to that. But that's okay. We wanted to push ahead and still have this event anyway. A lot of people, I guess, especially last year, are used to the idea of doing these sorts of events online anyway. So it was a good opportunity to have a chat to you guys. If we can start with Sharon.
Yeah, sure.
I just would really like to know where the idea for the Gardeneers came from.
Yeah, so I did a course in the kind of an introduction to permaculture course through a great little organization here in the Blue Mountains, Littleton Stores. And it was really interesting to me because in learning about the permaculture principles, I've never really considered myself much of a gardener. And I was, thought I was a bit of a brown thumb, but I liked the idea that the principles can apply in lots of different ways besides just gardening, and that it's more of a how you live your life in terms of trying to produce less waste, and there's mindfulness aspects to it as well. And I was trying to find a way to kind of explain some of these concepts to my own kids. I've got a 5-year-old son and a daughter who will be 9 next week, and I've been trying to find more ways to get them engaged in our garden and, doing things outside around our house. And so I just kind of, as I was explaining these principles to them, I thought, oh, it would be really cool if, there were some kind of book series or something that went into these principles a little bit more with kids, and did a little research, didn't find anything. So I said, all right, I'm going to make it then.
Cool. And just for ignorant people like myself, can you just give us a bit of an idea of what permaculture actually is? How is it different from gardening or farming? Yeah,
sure. So permaculture is, to be clear, I'm not an expert on this by any means. I've done a couple of intro courses. So if I explain things not exactly properly, please forgive me. But I guess it's a way of approaching design and creating, looking at your garden and more as a system. And, as I said, it's integrating it more with the rest of your life, and it's about working with the land. So I think a lot of kind of more mainstream gardening, for example, focuses a lot on like things like getting rid of weeds, getting rid of pests. But permaculture really looks at all of those things as being part of, part of the earth, part of the system. We share this land with, snails and worms and, all these creatures. And, how can we work with those things instead of just trying to, throw down fertilizer and, throw down weed killers. And it's a bit more holistic.
Okay, cool. And question for you, Tia. How did you end up working with Sharon? Have you known her for a long time, or is this kind of the first thing that you've worked on?
Yeah, it was actually kind of like word of mouth. I think my postman told me that he saw Sharon's post on Facebook, postman. And then one thing led to another, and yeah, here we are.
So you found out about Sharon through the postie?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Good mate. That's how the mountains work. So
that's really funny. I didn't know that.
That's a classic.
Yeah, I posted something on Facebook in a group I think it's like creative people in the Blue Mountains. And I just put something up on Facebook looking for someone who was interested in possibly collaborating. And yeah, the postman helped us, I guess.
There you go. And Tia, can you tell us a little bit about your background as an illustrator?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been drawing my whole life, and I spent probably the early parts of high school doing illustrative sort of work, and then it turned into really detailed drawings, and now I just dabble across a whole bunch. So this was a really, really good project for me to get back into characters. It's been a while, and a really good break from very fine artsy stuff that I do at uni. So yeah.
So is it fair to say that the illustrations that you draw for the Gardeneers is quite a step away from what you've done before?
Yeah, it's something that I've certainly had a lot of practice in, but I haven't done it for quite a few years. So it's something I've come back to.
Okay. Is it something that you've been able to use as part of your fine arts degree? Has it helped, do you think?
I think it's helped to be drawing more often. Yeah. I sort of find that I have a lot of gaps in when I draw, and it'll be once a term, once a year, and then I'll spend the rest of it doing more theory work. But now I draw every single day on these books now. So yeah, I get a lot more practice in.
Excellent. And Sharon, same question for you. What's your background in terms of writing and being an author?
Yeah, so I started writing, again, like when I was in high school, was always really interested in, I did a lot of drama in high school. And so I started out with writing plays, which is interesting because I think I'm a lot better at writing dialogue in my books. They tend to be very dialogue heavy, less prosy, I guess. And yeah, it's not something I've really done professionally. I've done a lot of like blogging, and I work in communications and social media, things like that. But getting to do creative writing now and do it as a career is really exciting. Yeah,
for sure. And what sort of skills do you think that you need to write for kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think just my experience working with kids a lot, because I've because I have taught art classes and drama classes, and I've run play groups. It's just a lot of, I do a lot of observing of kids and seeing the way that they play. And I think I'm able to capture their interactions, really authentically. So yeah, that's definitely been a big help. And of course, I read a lot to my kids. And so especially when you're reading things out loud, sometimes over and over and over, like 50 times, you get a sense of, kind of the rhythm of writing for kids. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about you, Tia? What when you're coming up with the illustrations for a book like The Gardeneers, and where do you start? What's the process for deciding what the different characters are going to look like?
Yeah, sure. I think I do have a similar background as Sharon. I do work, I coach gymnastics, so I've also spent a lot of time with children. And I think typically, you know, I'll read the scene first and then I sort of think about their personalities. So Chloe, obviously, I find is someone who really likes to try her best. So I try and make her hair really neat and stuff like that. And Yasmin is absolutely wild in my eyes. So she's always looking for something fun to do. I make her hair messy and big bright eyes and everything. And in terms of how the scene comes together, it kind of changes depending on it. A lot of the time Sharon has really, really good ideas of what she thinks they should be doing, and that's usually the best way to go about it anyway. And then I'll sort of just come up with the best way to situate it drawing wise and how they should be peeking out of behind trees and things. So yeah.
Is that something that you two work together on a lot in terms of deciding what the characters are doing? Is it a case that Sharon tends to write it and then you read what she's written and then work around that, or is it something you're working on at the same time?
Yeah, it's definitely collaborative. Sharon usually has the scene really, really well laid out. And then say, for example, like Yasmin and Chloe are both in this scene and they're both looking at a bug. And then I'll kind of come up with the creative direction of how that scene would come together.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and so oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Keep going.
So I because I also do the design and layout of the books ahead of time, what I'll usually do is I'll send Tia a PDF of basically how I want the book to be laid out. And then we go through and I number each, like, you know, there'll be a space where a drawing should go. So I'll indicate, you know, that's where this drawing goes. So I usually have a good idea of, you know, generally, broadly speaking, what I want things to look like. But then, you know, Tia has a lot of room, I think, for interpretation as well. And sometimes really delights me and surprises me with what she comes up with, how she chooses to illustrate a scene.
Yeah, cool. That actually brings up another question for you, Sharon. I'm going through the books, I was kind of intrigued to know how you actually decide where a picture should go, because most of the pages have one picture on them. Every now and then there's a page that's just writing with no image. And I guess there's probably some obvious points where it seems appropriate to put an image, but is there a process you go through deciding how many images should be in a book? Should it be roughly one per page? Is there a particular event in the story that's more likely to have an image than another?
Yeah, it's, you know, I have a bit of a process, but it's loose and flexible as well. What I actually do when I'm writing the books, because I use my kids as my test audience, my test readers, and I'm not a drawer or an illustrator at all. So I create the books in Canva. And what I'll do is I'll just go through and use like the stock images that come in Canva and try to kind of vaguely illustrate the scene.
Yep.
And so that gives me an idea of where things should go. And it's, you know, I kind of just get a sense of it as I'm going through each chapter. And then sometimes also it's a matter of trying to get the pages to a certain number, because I try to keep the page numbers in all of the books consistent and chapter lengths relatively consistent as well. So sometimes you pad something out with a larger picture. Sometimes you can only squeeze in a smaller picture.
Sure. Tia, have you seen any of Sharon's drawings?
I have not. I would love to.
No, nobody needs to see those.
Just on that point, Tia, have you done any writing yourself? Is it just about illustration, or are you interested in doing?
Yeah, I actually really love writing, and it's been a while since I've kind of gotten back into it. It's been a lot of kind of theoretical essays for a long time with uni and high school, but yeah, now that I'm sort of starting to illustrate again, and it's good to kind of get in that headset, and I think I'd really like to get back into writing and maybe write and illustrate my own thing one day. Would be really cool. Yeah,
nice. This is a question, I guess, for both of you as well, and we'll start with Tia. When you're drawing those illustrations, do you have real life kids in mind? I mean, do do you get some inspiration from kids that you've worked with or seen in the street, or are these characters just basically coming from nowhere?
I think the characters themselves come very much just out of nowhere. I just come up with them in my brain. But a lot of the poses that they're in, I would see in old family photos, which I work a lot with my own work anyway. So I've always got photo albums out, and I take a lot of inspiration from those.
Yeah, that's cool. And Sharon, I mean, same question to you. When you're writing the characters, you have your own kids as well. Are they sometimes partly inspiration for the characters or some of the kids that you've worked with in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. My daughter likes to say that Chloe is based on her, which is only sort of partly true. You know, Chloe's sort of one aspect of her personality, but she does get a little Yasmin in her sometimes as well. And yeah, I also, you know, like I said, because I've done a lot of play groups and things like that, there's definitely, you know, not necessarily specific kids, but certainly specific scenes. Like one of the books that hasn't come out yet that I'm still working on, the kids set up a mud kitchen in it, and that's very much based on some of the play group things that I've done in the past.
Okay. And I guess while we're talking to you, Sharon, as well, I'm interested to know what the challenges are of writing a kid's book. I I don't know if you know or not, but the British sitcom called Black Books, one of my favourite TV shows, is a whole episode dedicated to a couple of the characters thinking that it's the easiest thing in the world to write a book for kids. Right. And they basically drive themselves crazy trying to do it and realising that it's actually much harder than you can possibly imagine. What have you found that experience of writing for children?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've actually tried in the past writing some more like picture books. Mm-hmm. And it is really challenging because you are working with so few words. You're really a lot of the time in picture books, obviously the pictures are telling the story a lot. And yeah, I've found it really hard to, I guess, try to condense my writing into smaller bite-sized kind of books. So that was one of the reasons that I like doing chapter books, is because you can tell more of a fully fleshed out story. You can have more dialogue. You can have, an arc to the story. Yeah.
And how much thought do you have to put in, I guess, to the language that you're using? I mean, I guess you have a key demographic in mind, a key age group for kids. How do you kind of understand how those kids talk and what sort of level of language they're at?
Yeah, again, because I read them out loud to my kids, if sometimes a word will come up and they'll ask me, oh, what does that mean? And I'll think, oh, okay, maybe I need to put a different word in there instead. But at the same time, like, I don't think it's a bad thing to challenge kids a bit too with vocabulary. And some of the books that my kids read, I find like some of the sentences are maybe a little too simple. And so I think I've kind of maybe pushed a little bit beyond, like, so the books tend to be targeted towards kids like 6 to 8 or 9, I would say. And some of the vocabulary, probably wouldn't be on like, an educator's list of what vocabulary is necessarily appropriate for that age group. But I don't mind giving them a little bit of a challenge, I guess. Yep,
fair enough. We've actually got a question through asking to see a couple of the images from the book. So I might just show everyone. This is, if you can see me going in the opposite direction. So this is the first in the series of the Gardeneers. When did this one come out?
January. Yeah. So we've basically been releasing one book every month for all of 2021, which is a challenging but exciting way to do this project.
And I don't know if you can see, can you see that clearly?
Yep.
Yep. So there you go. There's a good example of some of the images inside as well, and the story as well. So just on this topic as well, I wouldn't mind quickly asking Tia a similar kind of question. Is there a particular approach you take to doing drawing and illustration when you know it's for that particular age group? Because I know I'm assuming you've done a lot of, I guess, more advanced drawing for adults. You've work on murals and that kind of thing. I'm guessing it's a different approach that you need to take to drawing specifically for this target.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I think a lot of the time it's more about an over exaggeration of what they're doing or how they're feeling. So if they're laughing, and you know, sometimes it'll just be like a head toss or something. And sometimes there's one of Yasmin in one of the books where she's literally on the floor laughing and kicking her legs around. So I find that's the only main thing that I have to do, like just make sure that all the characters are clearly in view and you can really, really tell what they're thinking and feeling. Adults is very much more like hidden clues and things. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just show, I think this is the photo that you're talking about. Yeah. I love this drawing because it really captures each kid, and like you perfectly nailed like how they would react to it's like they're making a joke about poop because they're using manure to use as the compost in their soil. So it perfectly captured how they'd all react to this poop joke.
So I mean, that's I'd be interested to know what you guys are looking for from these books. What are the messages that you want to get out to the kids who are reading these books, apart from how funny poop jokes are?
Yeah.
Which we all know
yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the reasons I wrote them the way I did is I think they're a really good teaching resource. And I've had a few educators or, you know, people who work with kids in community gardens or school gardens talk about buying the whole series for their school or for their library. And yeah, I mean, I just really love the idea of getting kids more interested in being outside and, you know, getting their hands in the dirt. So many kids these, you know, not to get all like kids these days, but, you know, there are a lot of kids who, you know, I've encountered who are afraid of getting dirty. You know, they don't want to mess up their clothes. And, you know, of course, probably some of that comes from their parents as well. But, you know, I just want to get kids outside and playing and, you know, yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Tia?
Yeah, I think Sharon's right. It's really, really good to kind of encourage getting out more in the landscape. So I really enjoy drawing those little illustrations where they're finding a cicada or something, because that's how I grew up. That's what I would want to do in the playground. So I do think that's really important, first and foremost. And I've noticed other little parts of the book. There's one of the early books that there's a little argument between Will and Yasmin, and it was so beautifully resolved. And I just love the way that it's encouraging kids to be more inclusive of people around them and everything. So yeah.
Cool. I guess I'd ask a similar question, but from the parents' perspective or adults' perspective. What we in the bookshop, we had someone come in a few weeks ago, and I was talking a bit about your books, and they said they had I think it was a grandson who loved being out in the garden, getting his hands dirty, mucking around with the chooks, that kind of thing. But she couldn't for the life of herself get him to read. And that's what it made me think that, you know, I should mention the series that you guys were working on. And she ended up buying a couple of copies for that very reason, to try and find a topic that he would be really interested in, and getting him to start on the road to reading. Were you thinking of that kind of approach when you first started the books, that this not only would it be entertaining for kids, but it might work as a tool for parents to be able to get kids interested in A, reading, or B, permaculture?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I did this as a series as well. And wanted characters that, you know, you really follow on on a bit of a journey, and like you see the characters grow and change as the books go on. And you know, I wanted something that kids would want to read as well, to find out, you know, what happens next to these characters. And you know, my kids are always giving me ideas for things that we should do. And she really wants the teacher, Mr. Barbossa, and Myrtle, the gardener, to get married at the end. And I said, I don't think we'll be seeing a Gardeneers wedding, but
Can I ask?
but yeah, you know, I wanted characters that they felt like they wanted to see what happens next with them.
Sure. This is probably a question more for Tia. What's going on with Mr. Barbossa's beard?
I don't even know how to answer that. Yeah, look, I'm not sure. I think it was just me having never drawn a beard before, and the very first book was, how do I draw a beard? And I've just done it, and now I have to stick with it. So that's what it is.
It's really funny though. Like, it just goes to show you how good illustrations are at building a character, because I hadn't necessarily envisioned him as being like super comedic, but the kids just like love the pictures of him, and they just think he's absolutely hilarious. And I don't think I'd necessarily intended him to be like the comic relief in the books, but you know, it's like you put his like bearded face on a little Italian grandma, and it's like comedy gold. They love it.
And that's, I totally agree with that. I think it's worked really well. I know, when the first time I saw Mr. Barbossa, he kind of struck me as being an Amish type character. But yeah, the more you read the books and get to know him, the beard works perfectly. I don't know why. I hate it, but it works perfectly. Is there anything that, I guess for both of you, that you've learned from this process? I mean, if you were starting again from scratch, is there anything that you would have done differently?
In terms of like the way that we've written and produced the books, I don't think so. We started the project using Kickstarter as a way to kind of do like pre-sales and make sure that we had kind of enough audience and enough people interested, and also so that I could pay Tia upfront as well for some of the artwork. And I don't know that I would necessarily do it that way again. You know, maybe there's a better platform, but like I think it confused a lot of people who thought that they were donating to the project, or I don't know. It was kind of a funny way of doing it, but it all worked out okay. And you know, now that we're producing the books, we've got 6 of them out, and they're starting to get them into stores and sell them online and things like that. And it's going a bit smoother now.
Yeah, excellent. And what about you, Tia? Same question.
I think sometimes I sort of wish that I worked out all the possibilities of things or ways that I could have drawn something at the start, so that I could have been doing it from the start. Like, there are some books where I use like a grayscale tone, which I didn't use at all at the start because my head was telling me that would be different in printing. I was like, I can't do that. And then I started doing it. I was like, this is really useful, and I wish I did it in earlier books. So that's probably the main thing I'd say.
Fair enough. Just on that topic, actually, is there a particular reason why the illustrations are grayscale, black and white, rather than color inside?
It's cheaper. It's cheaper to print,
wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the very practical reason. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I did want full color illustrations for the cover. I wanted to make sure that the covers were colorful and would grab kids' attention. Yeah,
absolutely. And that makes plenty of sense. Have you seen any kids trying to color in the pictures inside the books? I wonder if
I started producing coloring books actually for that reason, because my kids were asking about coloring them in, and of course I got all precious about it. And I was like, no, don't color my books. Yeah, so we had a book launch party recently that you were at, and we did. Tia made up some really awesome coloring or drawing sheets so that kids could actually learn how to draw the characters themselves and then color them in.
Yeah, that were really cool. Well, yeah, just in case you need to find a replacement for Tia, she's training them up for you, so that's handy. Would you ever consider making this series, maybe doing a series for slightly older kids as well, some kids in their early teens? Is that something you would consider, or are you pretty content where you are?
Like, it's something I would, I never say never, right? I think because I just don't have as much experience reading and, reading books in that genre, it's not something that I feel like I would, I would have to do a lot more reading first to kind of figure out how you write for that age group a bit more. Tia and I have actually chatted about doing a book for younger kids though, which, I don't know where we are with it yet, but we have talked about doing like just a one-off picture book, kind of an ABCs of permaculture, something that could be more for like preschool aged kids.
Yeah, cool. That thanks to Jen for that question, by the way. I can't claim that as my own. Any advice? I'll start with you, Tia. Any advice for aspiring illustrators, for for people, particularly for kids' books? If there's an illustrator out there that wants to do their own book, maybe illustration and writing, or just wants to be an illustrator with another author, what sort of advice would you give them?
This is going to sound so cliche, but practice is honestly the very, very best thing you can do. In terms of kids' books, I think exposure really, really helps. Not in terms of getting yourself out, but looking at other things. Like I have a shelf full of kids' books over there, just Sharon Tan and Jim Kay books, just because I love looking at the other things that other people do. And I'm always like, Pinterest is full of amazing illustrators and I'm all over it all the time. I don't sleep. I just look at art. So yeah, it's really, really handy to look at that.
Yeah, cool. Is there someone who, or a couple of people who you would view as your inspiration as an illustrator?
Yeah, definitely. Sharon Tan, my go-to, my absolute favorite, and he crosses in with inspiration for my fine art as well as my illustrations. So
yeah, Catherine will love to hear that. Catherine's a huge Sharon Tan fan.
Oh, he's the best.
And Sharon, same question to you. What sort of advice would you give to people who want to write a kid's book? And I guess also, do you have inspiration in terms of children's book writers?
Yeah, for sure. I guess my best advice is just go for it. Like, we're self-published, and publishing can be a very difficult industry to break into. And my advice is don't let that hold you back. And if you can write it and you can dream it, you can imagine it, you can find a way to produce it and make it work. And in terms of inspiration, yeah, I mean, same, like, our books are just chock full of kids, our shelves are chock full of kids' books. Julia Donaldson, of course, is like, modern classic. I really like the what is it? Rosie Revere Engineer. It's kind of a series of those books that I really like because they're, getting kids more interested in things like science and engineering and those kinds of skills that, you wouldn't necessarily think might translate into like a really fun, action-packed, exciting book, but they actually are like really beautifully illustrated and lovely rhyming prose, and yeah.
Yeah, cool. And just on that point, I mean, can you maybe tell us a little bit about Loose Parts Press as well?
Yeah, sure. So I started basically as an independent imprint, Loose Parts Press, with the idea that, I wanted to self-publish these books and kind of see what happens after that. So, we are interested in potentially helping other Australian authors who have great stories to tell, but are finding it difficult to break into, some of the bigger name publishers, to try to help get other stories out. And particularly interested in kids' books, obviously, that encourage, just a lot of the things that we were talking about encouraging more play and encouraging kids to be outside and things like that.
Yeah, cool. I've got a question from the chat as well, and I think this could be a good one for Tia. Easter eggs. Are there any Easter eggs in your drawings for that hardcore fans can follow?
Ooh. Do you know what? I actually don't know. I think I usually only see the drafts of the book like as they come in per month for me to start working on them. So I haven't really got many clues to drop, unfortunately, but I do love using them, but not yet.
I think there's maybe some running jokes, like,
Yeah.
going back to like Mr. Barbossa, there's like, he often ends up, not every book, but a lot of the books, he ends up in some kind of weird getup. Like he's a farmer in the first book. He's like an old Italian grandma. In one of the upcoming ones, he's like in a full beekeeper suit. Yeah, so that's something like running jokes, I think.
All right, well, that's something to work on for the next few books.
Yeah.
And just on that topic as well, have you had any requests from kids or adults even to be included in the book as characters?
Yes, my son, you know, of course, I represented my daughter in the book, and now, of course, he wants a character as well, which we're actually doing in book number 8. We introduce some of the kindergarten students into the garden, and of course, the Gardeneers, the kids who have been working on this garden, they're all in year 3. And so there's kind of some interesting tensions when they bring in these kindy kids who they're like, oh no, they're just going to stomp on our tomatoes and, you know, ruin our perfect garden, and they have to learn how to work together. And that book is all about the permaculture principle for that one is about integration, and it's about integrating these different groups of kids together.
Okay,
and yeah, so sorry, I didn't really answer that question, but the one of the kindy characters is then based on my son. So
there you go. And Tia, what about you? Have you been approached by kids or adults to be drawn into the series?
I have not had that question. I had an old school friend of mine buy one and then get me to sign it because she wanted to have that on a plate or something, so that was funny, but I haven't had anyone else to be drawn in. Okay.
Well, you'll have to start charging people, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
While we're with you, Tia, what else are you doing apart from the Gardeneers? Are you working on anything else?
I have like 50 things going on at once all of the time, so there's like 4 drawings behind me on the floor. I dropped one this morning. There's obviously the Gardeneers, and then I've got uni, and then I've got murals every now and then. So I'm very busy all the time.
I know the feeling. What about you, Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is not my full-time gig by any means. So I have a day job as well. And yeah, I'm involved in a few local environmental groups and things like that. But in terms of my creative projects, it's this at the moment is definitely taking up most of my focus.
Yeah. A question for both of you, are you happy with the way things are going with the Gardeneers? Are you hearing back from anyone that it is actually getting kids interested in permaculture and wanting to learn more about it?
Yeah, like I think we're starting to get a bit more word of mouth. Definitely the most challenging thing of self-publishing is yeah, getting it out there and getting it, you know, working on marketing it and getting into bookstores. So yeah, like I'm really happy with how the books are turning out. It's just, yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Spreading the word, but you know, I think locally in the mountains, I'm starting to hear from people who, you know, maybe bought just the first one and now are coming back to buy a few more, and yeah, people who want to get them once the entire set is published and want to buy like a whole set for their school library or something like that. So that's exciting. Yeah,
cool. Tia, what about you? Have you been hearing from people who have been encouraged to really get their kids into permaculture as a result of it?
I don't find much of it goes through me. I probably should market it a little bit more than I do. Once I get a spare second maybe, but yeah, either way, it's been going really, really well, and it's been such a good project to be part of, and it's really becoming something that has especially helped me with practice too. Like, you know, no one's perfect, and me being able to draw every single day, 2 illustrations usually a day, has been great for, you know, developing myself anyway. So yeah. It's been going really well.
Excellent. And I'm not sure if we've mentioned this yet or not, but how many books are there going to be in the series?
The 12 books in the series. Yep. So yeah, it'll finish up. The last one will come out in December, hopefully right before Christmas.
Okay. And are there any cliffhangers that we can expect?
I don't know. So I've written 11 out of the 12 books, and I think I've been putting off writing the last one because I kind of don't want the series to end. Yeah, the final permaculture principle is about adapting to change, and so there's definitely going to be some changes coming up for the kids that they'll have to adapt to. So I think we kind of we'll put a little bow on it, and you know, I don't think the series will necessarily continue, but yeah. Never
say never.
Never say never.
Yeah. Cool. And just for people watching this event, is there anything you'd like them to take away from what you've done? I mean, it's an amazing achievement, and you guys should be really proud of yourself. They're fantastic books, and we love having them in the bookshop, and you know, recommending them to pretty much anyone who walks in. Is there anything that you would like to say to people watching about what it's like to write a kid's book, the importance of permaculture, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like again, I would say, you know, just if you have ideas, you know, put them down on paper. If you're interested in writing, it's, you know, the same way that Tia was talking about practicing drawing every day really helps her. It's the same thing with writing. You know, the more you write, yeah, you know, and I've written other things in the past that, you know, I certainly didn't feel like were worth publishing or producing, but you learn from your mistakes as well, and yeah, just write and see what comes of it.
Tia?
I guess in terms of what I would say to everyone is just like, you know, if you want to do something, go out and find a way to do it, and, you know, explore your creative potential, because this was, you know, a year before I got involved in the Gardeneers was only kind of one thing happening in my life, just uni. I didn't have that as big as a creative outlet as I would like to. And doing this has just been so great to, you know, get more in the community and hear more about authors in the community and be more in the Blue Mountains and everything, feel more like I'm in the Blue Mountains because I'm in Sydney so much. So yeah.
Cool. And the question that we've also got on the chat, for people who are interested in the Gardeneers series, I mean, we sell it through our bookshop in person and online as well, but where else can you buy the book?
Yeah, I'm actually hoping to develop a better platform for selling the books online. At the moment, I sell them through our printer, which is called lulu.com. So the link to that shop is on my website, which is thegardeneers.com.au. I think that's right.
It's a good one to remember.
It's also like our Facebook page we've got Loose Parts Press as our Facebook page, and yeah, there's links all over the website and our Facebook for how to buy them. And if I don't know if people who are watching are necessarily locals to the Blue Mountains, but if you live locally, I've also been happy to like drop books off for people, and especially when we're in lockdown, I'm like, yeah, what else have we got to do?
Are there, is it getting out to bookshops as well? There are other bookshops where you can buy?
A couple, yeah. So also in the mountains, they're at Read On Books in Katoomba and Little Lost Bookshop in Katoomba. I'm hoping to start getting them out to more places and, you know, start getting them into Sydney bookshops. And I'm particularly interested in working with small independent bookshops, just because it's just something I've always loved having local bookshops and supporting businesses like yours. So yeah, we're definitely taking that approach first. It's just much harder to get into the big chains as well, like Dinix, when you're a self-published author. So
yeah, for sure. Anything you want to add on that point, Tia?
In terms of where they're being sold, I mean, that's as much as I know about as well. I do kind of throw links in and everything on all of my websites and socials as well. But yeah, I think for a Blue Mountains grown series, it's really great that they've been based in the Blue Mountains to start off anyway. So yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, at the end of this talk as well, we'll do a post and we'll put a bunch of links in there for where people can buy the books, Gardeneers website and the like. We've had a comment that you're both very inspirational as well, and I would totally agree with that. I think you've done a fantastic job.
thank you.
Looking forward to the rest of the books coming out, and then to seeing what you guys do after that as well.
Yeah, we'll see. I know people keep asking, and I'm like, I need to get through this year first. We'll see what happens.
That's fair enough. The way things are going this year as well, I think trying to figure out what you're doing next year is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, let's just try and get through this year.
Yeah, and I'd like to start teaching more workshops. I was meant to do some school holiday workshops next week, but those have all been postponed, of course. So yeah, hopefully once things calm down a little bit, I can do a bit more teaching. Yeah.
Cool. And just before we finish, we've got one more question as well. What have been the biggest hurdles in self-publishing? I know you've mentioned before getting into the big bookshops is a bit of a challenge, but what else have you found to be a problem?
I mean, I think I'm kind of my own biggest hurdle in a way, because I just, I don't consider myself much of a salesperson, and I just feel, a bit like self-conscious, I guess, about really promoting my work. And, I'd love for people to just come and find my books and, think they're amazing and not have to do any of the sales part of it. But, that's just not going to happen. I'm not going to just be discovered. So I think that's why I've liked approaching independent bookstores as well first, because you start building personal connections to people, and then it doesn't feel like you're selling. So yeah, I just need to be a bit better, I guess, about picking up the phone and actually calling people and putting myself out there a bit more.
Yeah, sure. And I guess some of the positive aspects as well, you have full control over the process too. You don't have editors telling you what to do, or marketing executives saying you can't use this cover, or you can't use that kind of image.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely, the biggest upside to self-publishing is, creative control and not being restricted, I guess, by like book categories. So like, for example, because I knew from the start that I wanted this to be a series, it's really hard to pitch a series to a publisher, because, that's 12 books that they're really taking a risk on. And, it's much easier to pitch, say, a picture book, for example, that can be a, kind of a one-off thing that you sell. But yeah, 12 books is an investment. And it's, especially as, someone who doesn't necessarily have like a big social media following, they're much more risk averse with new, unpublished authors.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who have gone down that road and tried to look at the big publishing companies has realized that you pretty much need a ready baked product to go, and you need to have that big social media following. And I guess this is probably the same in a lot of industries, you pretty much need to have made it already before you can make it, which kind of presents quite a challenge, a bit of a catch-22 situation. But the beauty of technology these days is that it's made self-publishing easier to do. Still not easy, but easier to do. And that promotion side as well. If you can actually get out there and push your books, you can actually get out to a surprisingly large number of people these days. So yeah, I think, as I've said before, you've done a great job so far, and all the best for the future. And thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you for having us. It's really exciting to get to be able to talk about the work a bit more. Well, so much of this has been sitting at my laptop, like in my bedroom alone at night after the kids have gone to bed, and so actually getting to talk about the process and stuff is really fun.
And look, the book launch was fantastic as well, and I really liked the way that it was targeted at kids. And the people who weren't there, Tia did a fantastic drawing on the spot of one of the characters as well, which the kids loved too. But it's really nice to have this opportunity, I guess, to talk a bit more about the actual process of writing books.
And that drawing that Tia made, I don't know if you stuck around to see that the kids started adding their own like details into the drawing, and they turned it into like this mural almost, adding in little details and writing their names. And
oh, that's cool.
And my kids and other kids that I know, kids of my friends who were at the book launch, have been a lot more interested in drawing lately. Like they're just, constantly drawing and coming up with characters. And, kids really, when they see kind of, I guess, the process of creating a book demystified a little bit, it suddenly becomes, oh, this is something I could do. So that's been really exciting to see.
Yeah, cool. Well done. There you go, Tia. Very, very inspirational drawing.
Thank you. I think they definitely made it better than I did at the start. So,
all right. I think we've asked a bunch of questions. We've had a really good chat. I think we'll probably sign out now. Big thank you to you two for coming on and having a chat with us. This is actually the first author talk that we've done, as well as RoseyRavelston Books. It'll be the first of many, but we really appreciate you getting on board in these challenging times. And having a chat to us, and highly, highly recommend to anyone watching as well, even if you don't have kids of your own, if you've got nieces or nephews or grandkids or the like, have a look at this book, because it's beautifully written, beautifully drawn, and it's a great message as well. And as I think I mentioned at the beginning, 25% of the profits go to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation too, I think. Literacy Foundation, I should say. So it's a great cause as well. Cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
No problem. Thank you.
Really fun.
Hopefully the next time we see you will be an in-person event.
That would be nice. Hopefully it's not next year. Excellent. Thanks a lot.